getting right to it, my name is Catherine Stevenson. I am the director responsible for data integration infrastructure at Statistics Canada. And I have the pleasure of facilitating our conversation for the next 45 minutes. I just want to give you a heads up right now that this is intended to be interactive. There are some microphones stationed around the room, so please don't be shy with your questions. In terms of format, each of the panelists is going to have some opening remarks, and then I'll probably kick off a question or two or six, but you will have great questions too, so please don't be shy to go up to the mic. So without further ado, on my far right, your left, is Alexandra Dykes, Director of Performance and Oversight, Information and Data all those things, Information and Data Governance, Data and Digital Policy Sector at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. Next, we have Nadia Ahmad, Chief Data Officer and Head of Evaluation at Global Affairs Canada. And close to me here, we have Guyan Perez, Head of Data and Technology, Chief Digital Office, United Nations Development Program. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Alexandra.
It's a good job because I put my name up there. They gave me the button. That was a bad idea. So welcome, everyone. So what can I tell you about a little bit more about what Stephen Burt talked about, which is our data strategy for the Federal Public Service. So first and foremost, this is not a new layer of burden that we're putting on all of our Canadian government departments and agencies. In fact, what we're trying to do is enable all of the work that was already done to be elevated and pushed out to the rest of well, everywhere actually in the Federal Public Service. So we had an original data strategy in 2018 that really set us up to talk about this slide actually gives you sort of an overview. Data as an asset, and what do we mean by that? So if you think about all of the data that we have, certainly in Canada, a lot of it is in silos, whether they be provincial, municipal, and within departments, within programs. We find that we have little packages of data, and they all have value to individual programs or services, but how much more value could they have if we could share that? So there are, as I'm sure you all have, there are a lot of data sharing agreements between our programs, between departments, but we need to go further. So I know that OpenGov, you probably are all aware in some fashion of the move to really make as much data available to the public as possible, and that's on our websites. And that goes only so far. The data strategy, as you heard earlier, are those 4 missions about data by design, data for service delivery, data for decision making, and talent. But it really is they're kind of all 4 pillars of the same thing. They're all about using our data better. The big thing for us in the first year of the 3-year plan is developing data standards, because without data standards, we can't have interoperability. We can't link together data sources that can then tell us more about the big picture. So that's a big focus for us. And I had 1 to 3 minutes, and I could keep going on, but instead, I'm just going to turn it back over.
Thank you for that. I love the way that you inserted that you're not here to be a burden. For those of you who don't work in the Canadian Public Service, that is the tagline for the Treasury Board Secretariat that you must state at every one of these types of events. And I always hear that, and it reminds me to be nice, to be a little nicer for things coming out. So over to you, Nadia, to talk about what's going on at Global Affairs.
Thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be on this panel with such esteemed colleagues. So in response to this theme, knowledge is power, deploying data, I really couldn't help but quote the Spider-Man comic book, right? With great power comes great responsibility. You got it. So as public servants, we're entrusted with this unparalleled opportunity to harness data for the greater good. Yet with this power, as we were just saying, comes great responsibility, a responsibility to ensure that the data that we wield reflects the diversity and complexity of the communities that we serve. I think that some of you are probably familiar with the concept of data feminism, which was first championed by scholars Catherine D'Ignazio and Lauren F. Klein in their book by the same name. If not, don't worry about it. You just have to look it up. The entire book is available for free online. But this approach, data feminism, a data feminism approach demands that we recognize voices that have historically been marginalized or silenced and amplify them through the data that we collect and analyze. Data feminism prompts us to question not just the data itself, but the very processes by which it's collected and interpreted. Are our methods inclusive? Are our algorithms reinforcing biases? Are we using data to empower and uplift or to further entrench inequalities? Moreover, data feminism calls for transparency and collaboration. So we must actively engage with the citizens and communities, including traditionally marginalized communities, as well as experts to co-create data narratives that truly reflect lived experience. By involving those affected by policies and programs in the data generation process, we ensure that the decisions that we take are rooted in empathy and respect. So, as you can see on the screen, in addition to being the Chief Data Officer at Global Affairs Canada, I wear the hat of Head of Evaluation. So I lead a team of professional evaluators who are responsible for assessing the programs that are managed by Global Affairs Canada for effectiveness, relevance, results, efficiency. And to their credit, this group of evaluators is blazing a new path in evaluation by applying these feminist principles to their data collection and analysis methods. For them, the principle of do no harm is a floor and not a ceiling. They recognize the need to go beyond fair, which, as you all know, is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data, to fairer, which includes ethical and reproducible into the mix. So the way that they go about this, one of the ways at least, is in choosing partners in data collection who have local knowledge, cultural awareness, and established community connections and trust. This is about acknowledging our own power and the negative impacts it can have on our data collection and analysis efforts, and taking concrete steps to offset that power differential. So in collaborating with organizations or individuals deeply rooted in marginalized or vulnerable communities, they are able to build a level of trust and understanding that's often inaccessible otherwise. They empower these partners to lead in the data collection and thereby overcome barriers, increase participation rates, and ensure that marginalized voices are amplified. This inclusive approach not only yields more accurate and representative data, but also empowers marginalized communities by ensuring their concerns and needs are heard, thereby paving the way for more equitable policies and interventions. We also ensure that the contracts that we enter into with these partners are sufficiently flexible so that we can provide accommodation to those individuals we're trying to engage in data collection. And what I mean by that is we're able to provide things like childcare expenses or travel stipends, or even just something as simple as food, which ensures that the people that we are trying to engage is sufficiently diversified, and that we are able to bring to the table those who traditionally may have not been there. So what I would say it basically is that the power of data can only be effectively harnessed when we implement ethical and inclusive practices in our data collection and analysis. Embracing data feminism requires a mindset shift and a commitment to taking a more activist role, one that sees data as not just a tool, not even just an asset, but rather a force for positive change.
Wow. Thank you for that. There's a lot to unpack there. And I'm going to put a pin in that, as they say, so that we don't completely derail your opportunity to share, Gayan.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. My name is Gayan Pires. I'm with the Chief Digital Office of UN Development Program. Now, for context, and those who are not familiar with the UN are literally bunch of agencies. There's the World Food Program, UNICEF, and we are the development arm of UN, UNDP as we are called. And we are present in over 170 countries. We say we have boots on the ground on 170 countries. So I'm going to talk about data from that vantage point. And at UNDP, we are involved at two different levels of data. We have a broader mandate. As we say, we work on issues like governance, climate change, energy, gender, crisis and resilience, poverty alleviation. So in this broader mandate, we work with governments on using data for their policymaking processes or public services in these areas. Also, now, since COVID, we are working a lot with governments to make sure the data innovations don't happen in silos. Therefore, we work on digital strategies, on data strategies to ensure governments are building what we call digital public infrastructure, just like your roads or electricity or railroads. For digital ID systems, the payment systems, and more importantly, the data exchanges, ministries talking to each other through data and the data governance frameworks to be the catalyst for innovation. So government don't have to always innovate. The ecosystem can innovate. You create the enabling environment. And this is an area UNDP works on as well. So I lead a project called a Data to Policy Navigator, basically encouraging policymakers to use data as evidence in their policy. And as a part of this project, we interviewed 19 different national statistical officers, specifically in the low and middle income countries, spread across regions. And the research was sort of complemented by 15 different global experts from World Bank, IMF, to civil society, to some private sector, including the big tech as well. And there were four themes emerging when it comes to data from countries. One, obviously, is they lack the capacity and the ability to attract data talent in the government as well. So this is a big problem. And the next obvious problem is they don't have a technical architecture as well to process data, to collect data. And the third problem is lack of data itself. Many of these governments don't have primary data, no national census at all, no use of secondary data. They don't even know what exists. So that's a problem. The fourth area is common across countries, across regions, which is a behavior change. A culture change in the government, in as a whole of society, a culture change. And if I may quote one of the interviews, I was told, we've been doing this for 20 years. This is how we do it, and this year it won't be different. We are doing the same. We have our models, we have our people, and it'll be the same. So a culture change, a behavioral change is a big issue in this area as well. And UNDP is working on addressing all four of these, all the way from strategy level to programmatic response to actually helping countries to find financial instruments on building their technical infrastructure as well. I can go on, but I'll stop there for...
Yeah, sounds very interesting. And I don't know, for those of you in the audience, when you hear this feedback from a study of how many countries did you say? 19 countries. To hear themes that to me really resonate with the modern day, working at StatCan, these are sort of eternal themes that they evolve, but it's, if there was a quick solution to it, we would have already done it. So it's interesting to see how sort of smaller developing countries in that space are highlighting the same things that, we've had a statistical agency for over 100 years. We still struggle in those areas. So that's very interesting. Quick look out here. We have these blazing lights shining at us. So if I'm not spending too much time looking at the audience, that would be the reason why. I'd invite you to come to the microphone with any questions. And while I wait for you all to scurry over to a mic, I just pick up on that piece around culture change, because we hear that all the time, right? And that's another one where it's like, just put that on the slide. It's culture change. We just have to do culture change. Does anyone want to pick up on, Alexander, you're leading the data strategy here for the Treasury Board Secretariat. You want to elaborate a little bit on, what exactly is that? Where do you think the barriers can we pick apart where we think some of the barriers are?
Oh boy. How long? Actually, that's a very good point to link it back to the data strategy. So one of the pillars that I talked about very briefly was talent. I didn't actually talk about the pillar. But we all know, we're all humans. Change is hard, and therefore it's a lengthy process. So I mentioned we were working on data standards. We're actually also proactively working on the talent piece. And culture change is a big part of that. It's how we think about everything. Culture, when we talk about data culture, I should say, because culture change, we're not talking about that one. That's way bigger than this discussion. But the data culture change is about taking a minute at every level and saying, do I have this data? How do I get this data? Does somebody else have this data? What could I potentially use? What would improve my ability to actually see the full picture? What data could I leverage? And for our senior managers, it's about giving the time and the space to do that analysis, because that is not easy. If if it was easy, we would have already done it. We have to maybe enter into agreements with other departments and agencies. Maybe we have to talk to StatCan about knitting together different data sources. My favorite question is the simplest sounding question. My go-to right now is, tell me how much funding we provide community A. Oh, can we do that? Absolutely not. But it's so simple. And it's such an easy, we should be able to answer that. It sounds really simple. And there are so many simple questions. But if you unpack them, the data may exist, but it's all over the place. And before we identify it and figure out how to knit it together, we could be, months, years, maybe, before we can do that. So the change of culture from senior management is understanding what data can do and its power, and also understanding what it cannot right now do. And then hopefully they'll invest in us being able to make it better.
I see there's someone at the mic, and I'm going to get to you in 1 minute, because I just wanted to connect that, Nadia, to, what I'm hearing you say is there needs to be a pause or a space for people to say, how would we do that? Or how could we do that? And I'll put my bias on the table that I'm a pretty strong advocate for innovation and experimentation in the public service. I think that's got to walk with the data in the path forward. Nadia, I wanted to just touch back to you in terms of, it sounded like you were bringing innovation as a way to actually address why have we not served people equitably. That innovation in terms of, it's almost a strange label to put on it, that it's innovative to actually serve people equitably. But I wonder if you could just touch on maybe some of the, when you're talking about taking a different approach, what are some of the things that have surprised you in terms of being able to actually make that happen in a bureaucratic setting?
Well, Catherine, I think it's the way you phrase the question is really interesting, because you say, is it really innovative? I don't think the what is innovative, right? We all know what we're supposed to be doing in this. I mean, we've come that far, at least, right? To know about the what. We know we're supposed to be more equitable. We know we're supposed to have good data governance standards, good, we kind of get the what. It's the how that is mystifying for many of us across public services, I think. And I think that's where things need to, we need to refocus our attention on the how, because understanding the how is the key, I think, to unlocking the culture change. Everyone has great intentions and is really kind of aware of the moment in time we find ourselves, and ready to, and poised, to take action. It's understanding how they're supposed to go about doing that. And I think that's what my team of evaluators has kind of broken down, in a way, is how we knew we were supposed to be more inclusive in our data collection. It was the how to go about it that was key to unlocking our success, I think, and coming up with standard operating procedures, coming up with things, speaking of innovation, coming up with things that are these online self-reflection tools that prompt you to ask yourselves the right questions, right? They're fairly simple innovations, but they're super effective at moving the dial in terms of behavioral change, which I know is the top of mind.
Okay, I'm going to pause there because I'm going to come back for behavioral change. Because I don't want the behavior to change after I've encouraged people to go to the mic and then not give them the chance to ask the question. I might reinforce the behavior of never coming back to the mic. So out to you in the audience, please. At the back. Yes.
Thank you so much. My question has to do with democratizing data. The focus is often on democratization through access, but my question is from a policy perspective. When we collect data in the context of performance measurement or results and outcomes, data is never neutral. It's always based on the question or the issue that we're asking first. So I was wondering if the panelists, especially from a Government of Canada perspective, to speak to how do we look at performance frameworks and perhaps get public input into what departmental outcomes should actually be, as opposed to just focusing on the data that we collect to report on those outcomes.
Great question. Thank you. Which one?
I can. So as far as the data strategy for the Federal Public Service, my answer is yes. That is an excellent question. So we have many frameworks. We have these PIPs, we call them, and that talks about the indicators. And it has already been suggested that that we should have more of a centralization. We should talk about methodologies. We should talk about appropriate measures. What are we really trying to do, and work with policymakers? From a data strategy perspective, yes, but we need the data first, because we need to get people thinking about what do they want to measure at the onset, so that you can do that data by design. Because if you can't collect it, then it doesn't matter how brilliant and amazing your indicator is. You don't have the data, so you can't measure it. So it's often, unfortunately, in performance measurement, it's a little bit of give and take. And actually, I spent a large portion of my career in that domain, so please don't hate me. We try to get around that, around the problems that we have, whether it's data is not reliable, it's not quality, it just doesn't exist. We try to get around that in other ways of having multiple indicators, which is okay, but ideally it's not what we would like to do. And I agree with you. We need to be more open and transparent. And as a whole of government, we also need to make sure that we're asking the right questions at first, making sure we have the right data, and also evolving, because it won't be just like you don't get one shot at it, right? These things do need to be re-looked at regularly so that we're sure we're doing as much as we can. So that's sort of from the data strategy perspective, but Nadia as an evaluator, I know will have more to say.
You know, I'll just say this, because I do have a lot to say on KPIs and performance measurement. I'm just trying to find the right kind of angle here. But what I will say is that we as organizations, I think one of the greatest challenges in this space is that we collect probably in some ways too much data that then is used for nothing. And so what I would advocate is collecting a far more restricted kind of amount of data along, more restricted KPIs, a more kind of streamlined KPIs, less data, better quality that people actually use to take decisions and course correct and inform their next steps, rather than, speaking of burden, people just having this culture of just entering a whole bunch of stuff into systems that no one ever accesses again for any purpose whatsoever. That's my biggest preoccupation when it comes to performance data.
More is not more. Less is more.
Did you want to add anything to that, guy?
Just to say, we at UNDP we sort of face the same problem as well. One thing I forgot to mention is I also co-lead the data strategy of UNDP, and for us the problems are the same as well. And one of the issues that we see, especially when it comes to what the question you asked, the context of the where the data is provided, the disconnect between where decisions are made and where the data is entered, basically. So people who are entering that in a form don't really realize how their data is used downstream or upstream in this case. So it's the same data that is open to management. We are trying to open it up for some of those insights, open it up for the entire organization as well. So they see when they enter something in that form, how it is used at management decision-making level.
Yeah, it's a great question. When I think about our experience as Statistics Canada, it's what's that co-creation model to make sure that what you measure has value to the people that you think are going to use it. And then it's that feedback mechanism of, so what did you use the data? What decisions are you making with the data? And what decisions are you not able to find data to help create that understanding of what direction you might go into next? So I hear your question, and I think there's that tension around how often does a government go sort of piece by piece out to the population, and how much does the population say, hey, government, like that's kind of your job to be reading the environment and to be curious about what's going on and to have flexibility in how you do that. So great question. Thank you. Close mic.
Hi there. I wanted to ask the question or the theme around sludge. Sludge being friction with a process or access or systems, and what the role of sludge reduction would take in data, building data systems, where we're talking about access, or the representative from the White House was talking about inclusivity and taking legacy systems and digitizing them sort of blindly, and that complexity that we're adding to a system without really looking at the maturity and the modernization of that system.
Cool. So the concept of continuous improvement, really being critical about what's baked in along with the business process, the rules, all of that sort of thing. Kaya, I put you on the spot with this one. I mean, the UN probably has an answer, right? I mean, we can always pitch it up to the...
Exactly.
No pressure.
And I think that there was some numbers shown this morning as well, and I was a bit surprised as well. And it's the same with the UN. I'm surprised in a way that we are sort of in the same boat as well. And like you said, some of the data that exists, a direct digitization of that data doesn't help, basically. And we have instances where that is even, it works against us as well, because some of the documents that I've seen, instances where people attach a copy of their passport to the payment request that they do. And if you simply digitize this data, some of the data that has privacy concerns get into the systems as well. So when we think about digitizing data, you need to think about what you said, less is better. And that's the key, basically. The less we digitize, only the data that we need are fed into our systems is the key, I think. That's my short answer.
You get. I see we have 10:40. I was going to say we have 5 minutes left, but that was my internal cue to not talk past 5 minutes. So I'll take another question, please.
I think this one will be quick. Hello, bonjour. This question is for Nadia. I was delightfully surprised to hear equity and inclusion brought into this conversation. And I know that Canada is a leader in this in many ways. So I would be really curious, in your efforts with feminism, do you consider trans women as women? And is that a part of your efforts for feminism?
It's a really great point. Our view of feminism is very broad and has really, it's not necessarily restricted to women at all. It's marginalized communities, and that is all marginalized communities. It's a GBA plus, if that resonates with you, GBA plus use of the word feminism. And so really just it creates an opening to engage with all vulnerable and marginalized communities, including all the LGBTQ2 plus communities.
Thank you.
There's another question at the back.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to all the speakers. This question is also for Nadia. I was also, as my colleague Andy was saying, pleasantly surprised that you were really bringing up data feminist principles. I am a big fan of ensuring that, we're always working towards data feminist principles. But, at the working level, I find that there are a lot of challenges of bringing this within a government, bureaucracy. So challenges such as, even being able to pay appropriately people that were equity deserving groups that we're working with to make sure that their time and contribution to the data that we're kind of working with is, properly compensated. Challenges of, I work at CBSA. So like when we're working on secret portfolios of how to manage that and how to ensure that, we do have kind of long, mutually beneficial relationships with diverse, equity-deserving communities. So I'm wondering, if you can speak to some of the challenges that you face, how you've overcome them, and any kind of like maybe advice you have for those on the working level who are trying to bring these principles to senior leaders, that this is necessary for our work. So I want to reiterate that I'm so happy to hear someone in your position, a senior leader, really advocating for this, but want to know how your team, it's like people under you, have advocated for that and some of the challenges you face. Thank you.
I appreciate the question. And on the issue of challenges, we're still being confronted with some, and I'll give you one example. So when we undertake data collection as evaluators, we engage with a partner to do that data collection with us. We have to enter into a contract to do that. Our contracting experts push us towards entering into contracts with Canadian companies for good reason, but that's the direction that we're pushed. And we have to, at every stage of the process, kind of resist this push to say, you must contract with this, finite list of Canadian companies in your data collection efforts, to say, no, we want to collaborate with experts or entities in the global south. We want to collaborate with people who have links in these marginalized communities, who have built relationships of trust, because without that, we're approaching these communities in data collection from simply this position of power and authority, and that differential creates barriers to being able to collect that data effectively. And so just being able to push our own contracting, experts to be able to engage with people outside of Canada has been an uphill battle that my team has been engaged in. So the challenge is real. I think where things start to become unblocked is where you're able to demonstrate the benefits of taking the harder route, right? And being able to show the data that you're gathering and the insights that you're able to retrieve from that data are far more impactful, beneficial, robust than otherwise. And being able to just incrementally show that progress is one of the keys to unlocking the problem.
Thank you. One last question.
Hi, you mentioned about talent, and we all know that if you have the brightest idea and you don't have the right people to implement it, you're not going to go anywhere. And lots of universities and colleges these days are doing all sort of different, like programs around data, around security, things that we really, strive to have them right in our organizations. But when you talk to, new grads, it's okay, do you want to join? No. If I go to government, I'm going to be stuck in IT1 or IT2 for life, Or if you talk to senior people, it's like, okay, yeah, the best I can get is an IT3. So I used to work in a private sector organization where they had the management, kind of ladder going parallel to the technical ladder. and you didn't have to be a manager or a supervisor, and become an IT4, IT5, or, like basically have a better pay for the service that you give. Have you thought about, like changing the way that we treat the talent?
So now we're going to go at like a 5-degree away from me. While talent is an integral part of the data strategy, I work very closely with my TBS colleagues in the talent team. And so I would say a couple of things about that. So there is a lot of work that's going on about career pathways, but I recognize exactly what you're talking about. And there are a few places in government that I've run into where that technical expertise and the need to pay people management level salaries, but that don't have management experience, because I know I'm looking out at the large group of people here. We have all run into these amazing, talented individuals that I would never in my entire life give a team. It would kill them and it would make the team very unhappy. So we don't want to do that in all instances. There are a few positions that I've run into that are places that are recognizing this need, because we do need subject matter expertise. We don't only, need somebody that, you're good at your job, you should be a manager. And I think there needs to be, and there is a recognition that is building that management competencies are different from a very technical individual and their technical competencies. And the two are not, they're not separate. They are separate things, but they need to work together. So I think there is a move toward that. I think we're far away. That's also, now you're touching on culture and career paths and the whole bundle of things. I'm actually very excited to see how the talent piece is going to develop in the data/digital place, because those are two sides of the same coin in a way. And we'll see where it takes us, because I think that you make a very strong point. And we do need to recognize that so that everyone can actually be the best themselves that they choose to be.
Thank you. In the last 2 minutes that we have, because I'm really committed to pretending that I'm punctual to this audience, I would love to hear your, what's your takeaway message on this? This is a very broad topic, obviously, right? And we're all working in this space. The good news is you will all be employed for the foreseeable future, because these are not things we're solving before noon today. But if you could give like one piece of advice or one takeaway that people could take back to their offices on this topic. I'd start at the end, Alexandra, to wrap up.
I get to go first again. Less is more. So when we talk about data collection, and I would also like to hone in as well on not making these giant, massive changes all at once. Continuous improvement. Bite off what you can chew, improve that, reap the benefits, and keep going.
Be the change you want to see, I guess. I think, this room is full of people with passion, enthusiasm, and probably a lot of really great ideas. I can feel it already just by the questions that are being asked. And I would say, don't sit on your hands. Make sure that you are someone who is bringing your thoughts and perspectives forward, and that you are helping to prompt and precipitate that change, that culture change that we all want to see.
Nadia, you wouldn't have picked a better sort of quote than the Spider-Man one, with great power comes great responsibility. You're in this room, you have the power. Whether you're a policymaker, whether you're from private sector, whether you're a data scientist, remember why you do what you do, and that is people. Put people at the core of what you do, and people's rights at the core of what you do. And measure your success not just by numerical values, but the development you make, the equitable access people get for education, social protection, the democratized societies. That should be your benchmark in this journey. So put human development at the core of it.
Thank you. That's a great note to end on. These three will be around, so please feel on your behalf. I'm inviting people to come up and have a chat in the next 10 minutes. And I don't know if it's going to be there, but in terms of what's coming up for the next, there it is, just like that. Love this power. please feel free to make your selection for your next session and have a great day. Thank you, everybody.
Well done.